Uber and Lyft drivers have responded to the company's email to Congress about treating their drivers better. And did they actually paint themselves in a corner by making a joint statement? Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur. Now before we begin really with two stories in this video, I do need to clarify one thing about yesterday's video. I did make a mistake, and that mistake was that there was nothing in the letter that actually discussed raising drivers' pay. Now, it falls on me that I was actually reading the article and didn't realize that, and actually got to the point where I talked about it and titled it that. However, I think what happened was that when I heard the news story, there was a news article there were a couple news articles that highlighted that Uber said they were going to pay the drivers better if Congress was willing not to regulate them. Now, I went straight to the letter, but those headlines were in my mind, so I think I projected those onto the article, which I shouldn't have. I should have been a little bit more careful. It's amazing what the power of persuasion can do. And when I went to find those articles later on, those titles had in fact been corrected themselves. So, I mean, most of the information was otherwise pretty solid. Obviously, the letter was uncut that we read, and I meant what I said about how if they did raise the rates, I would definitely drive for them again, and a lot of people would, and that they could totally avoid legislation if they did something like that, and that the main reason they were doing this was because they see the regulation coming. They're getting their throat stepped on in New York City with like the vehicle cap limit, which looks like it's going to become a permanent thing very, very soon. So otherwise, it was a solid video, except for that one little bit of information. So I figured I'd apologize for that. I should have caught it. I'm really sorry. I will try to do better. In the meantime, we got to talk about the letter some more. There is still a second part justified for this topic, because even though one of my talking points is going to be gone, which was basically that, if Uber and Lyft did in fact announce they'd raise drivers' pay, and this is probably the reason why they didn't talk about pay, they could be accused of price fixing, publicly saying they were going to price fix. But there's still things in that email. The mere fact they did a joint statement actually might have screwed them more than they realize. And by the way, drivers weren't particularly happy with the announcement anyway. However, before we talk about any of that, let's have a word from our sponsors, who thankfully were very compassionate about my mistake yesterday. Times are changing for gig workers and the gig economy, and there are a lot more gigs from a lot more companies than there used to be. That's why when people ask me where they can go to find resources for the gig economy, I recommend gigworker.com. At this site, you can see what other gig workers are doing and discover better opportunities from industries, companies, resources, and even a forum where you can talk with other people in the gig economy. Gigworker.com is a great resource site, whether you work for Uber, Lyft, Postmates, DoorDash, TaxRabbit, Thumbtack, Upwork, whatever. There's a gig for you, and there's a forum for you on gigworker.com. Gigworker.com for all your gigs. So before we talk about what one of the main problems was them releasing a joint statement, let's look at the driver's reaction. Oh, look, there's Joss. Yeah, it's I like Joss. Me and Joss get along very well. So anyway, Uber and Lyft launched a public campaign Wednesday to pressure California lawmakers and Governor Gavin Newsom into exempting them from pending legislation that would force them to classify drivers as employees. The ride-hailing giants have lobbied behind the scenes for months, arguing that their drivers should retain independent contractor status, even as drivers in California and across the country have mounted protests over low pay and a lack of labor protections, and filed thousands of lawsuits over their treatment. Quote, a change to the employment classification of rideshare drivers would pose a risk to our business, the companies declared in an opinion article published in San Francisco Chronicle Wednesday under the bylines of Uber Chief Executive Dara Khosrowshahi, Lyft Chief Executive Logan Green, and Lyft President John Zimmer. The company's stock prices have dropped since they went public this spring as investors question whether they can ever make a profit. They are up a little as the time of this recording. They might be down by the time you see the video, so, kind of an up and down thing with the stock. So, in their op-ed, the executive suggested that rather than classifying drivers as employees, they adopt a system of worker-determined benefits from paid time off to retirement planning to lifelong learning. The vaguely worded proposal did not seem to offer what labor labor laws gives employees a guaranteed minimum wage, overtime pay, and benefits such as sick leave, family leave, workers' compensation, disability, and unemployment insurance, because obviously Uber doesn't want to pay that. And rather than allow drivers to unionize, which I actually honestly thought that's what they were suggesting in the letter yesterday. I really thought they were suggesting that. At least it read that way to me, that they would like to negotiate with drivers. And how do you negotiate with drivers other than you have a union? However, apparently, according to the Los Angeles Times, that's not the case, which they could do if they are classified as employees. The company suggested forming a new driver association in partnership with state lawmakers and labor groups to represent drivers' interests. I mean, that sounds like a union to me. Maybe I'm wrong, though. A bill, AB 5, passed the California Assembly by a 59-15 vote last month to codify a 2018 California Supreme Court decision. The ruling requires classifying workers as employees if they perform work as part of a company's usual course of business. It is expecting to begin moving through the Senate next month, and it most likely will pass. In the legislature and administration dominated by Democrats, the bill pits two powerful constituencies that have often supported Democrats against each other, labor unions and technology companies. Yeah, so the bill is backed by California Labor Federation, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, here's what drivers are saying about this. They say they're offering retirement planning. What does that mean? They're going to open up a ballroom and talk about their future? Yeah. Classifying, yeah. Here's someone else. Who makes far more than the minimum wage? I am not willing to bargain away decades of progress on wages and labor protections for Uber and Lyft. These are billion-dollar companies. They've done everything in their power to make outrageous profits for shareholders at the expense of workers. This, I believe, Gonzalez. Oh yeah, that's that. That was that congresswoman who was actually at one of the protests. Yeah, I actually remember her. Let's see here. Governor Gavin Newsom did not respond to a request for comment on reports that his office has been involved in allegations of compromise to AB 5, but in an interview with Politico Tuesday, he was quoted saying, "I am very encouraged by the conversations we're having. I don't think it's a binary question. It's this or that. I don't want to stifle innovation. At the same time, I'm concerned, as everybody should be, about people running in place, working harder, but not getting any of the commensurate benefits." So, yeah, I agree. So, and then we have our buddies at Rideshare Drivers United saying the gig app industries are making bazillions for... Okay, just a little advice. Please don't use words like bazillions that aren't actually real. I mean, look, I screw up on reading words sometimes. That's partly because of the stuttering problem I have in the Asperger's. I'll admit that. However, if you want to make an actual statement on people's behalf, don't use fake words. Say billions. It's still an ugly word and people understand it. When you say bazillions, it so sounds like you're over-exaggerating the problem. Just my opinion. Personal advice, of course. Feel free to take it or not. They've implemented draconian pay cuts, and now they want us to form company unions without giving us the right to bargain for a real contract. It's a non-starter. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's the driver's response to this open op-ed piece, if you will. And I agree with them. It's a non-starter, especially, I honestly was hoping that driver pay would be part of it. However, it seems like Uber and Lyft will just dig their heels into that one a little bit more. I mean, geez. They didn't even have to make an announcement. You know what they have to do? They just have to raise the rates. And then announce that they're raising the rates effective immediately and that they are going to be, reaching out to people from these groups to figure out what kind of benefits they could be earning and how that might be implemented. That's all they have to do. And by the time it gets to the government bill, they can actually say, we have made progress. You don't need to do this. However, they're not doing that because I think this is a smokescreen. I think they're trying to basically say, please don't legislate us. We'll take care of this. But whether or not they actually do or not is another question. And you see how effective protesting and putting the pressure on Uber and Lyft does. Once you start legislating them, they do start to feel it and they start to panic. And the letter that they wrote yesterday was a panic move. It might have also seriously boned them because here's the thing. Uber and Lyft already get many, many, many complaints that they are a duopoly. A duopoly. Essentially, that is a monopoly times two. It's not one company that controls the market. It's two. And really, that's almost no better because especially when the two companies are priced and benefited so similarly to one another, it kind of makes the point of having a competition pointless. It makes having a competition pointless because Uber and Lyft pay the exact same amount of money. They have the same upfront pricing practices, and then they both screw people on the surge. I mean, Lyft is actually worse about it. I'm working on a video about how the Lyft prime time zone thing, yeah, that is a total stupid BS thing, and I'm glad that all these Lyft drivers are starting to realize it. Here's the thing though, by joining hands and releasing a statement, it actually makes it look like the two companies are colluding with one another. Seriously, because these are bitter rivals. They were racing to go public first. There's a lot of debate, which stock do you buy? Do you buy the Lyft stock? Do you buy the Uber stock? This was Uber and Lyft basically saying, hey, you know what? We don't want this to happen. Why don't we put aside our differences and we come together and we make a statement that we will take care of the drivers if the government doesn't legislate us. And here's the problem. By doing that, and this is what, by the way, Drivers United, this is what you want to put the pressure on, Governor Newsom again. This is what you want to pressure him. Like say, hey, they seem to be colluding. They have actually come together and they said we will work together to give the driver some sort of benefits. But they're competitors. They would easily want the other person out of business. So what does this actually mean? Does this mean they're, why are they working together when they should be competing with one another? And for that matter, what else are they conspiring on? Are they actually price fixing on the wages? Like, have they actually come together and agreed to keep the wages the same while they do the upfront pricing thing and take a lot of money? We don't know, but it's now a fair question to ask. And what if all of the benefits are the same? That actually suggests severe collusion, so that basically, even though they don't own one another, it means that, there's not going to be a whole lot of, we're going to leave this platform for this platform. They're going to do what they can potentially so that the only reason people go back and forth is whatever app is surging right now. Otherwise, they will get used the exact same and they can live comfortably and they can control this little market. So this statement should really throw gasoline on the argument whether or not Uber and Lyft are good for drivers and whether or not they're screwing with people. And yet, it's a fact that seems to be shockingly overlooked. Like, I didn't see a lot of I think read 2 comments from people who commented that this seemed like, co-conspiracy or collusion. Just 2, that's it. That is very, very bizarre. It should be a lot more people are looking at that and saying that doesn't seem right. And so whether or not enough people will notice, I guess we're gonna have to find out. So I'm kind of now, especially now that I really realize that the rates were never going to be raised. Now that, and I guess it's a good thing they didn't mention the rates, because if they both mentioned that they were going to pay more, then that would have raised the question. Well, are you price fixing? Which I still question if they are now that they're officially colluding. It appears, because who has the more expensive service? Like, who makes that call? And yeah, maybe there's even talks about Uber and Lyft combining. They both had underperforming IPOs. The initial investors are cashing out. Maybe a merger is coming down the line. Who knows? All I know is like Uber and Lyft deserve to be scrutinized even more by the government after this whole fiasco. So, man, and I was actually kind of giving them like some good marks yesterday because I read those stupid headlines and misinterpreted that whole situation. Except for the fact that they are trying to appease us because they don't want to get regulated. Well, you know what? Boo. Regulate them. Just regulate them. I see what they're doing now. They're trying to screw with everyone, and I almost fell for it. So I'm sorry I almost fell for it. Anyway, that said, what do you folks think? Do you think this seems like collusion or not? What are your thoughts about any of this? Please, I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly, and you get access to my Patreon's exclusive blog. Also, if gas prices are getting you a little down, check out the Get Upside app below. It's totally free, but you get cash back on every gas purchase. Consider subscribing to the Apptrepreneur Vlogs channel for more video content that's a little bit different from what we do here. And finally, if you want to talk to me or other fellow rideshare people, check us out at the Apptrepreneur Hangouts on Facebook. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.